All right, how's it going, guys? Welcome. You already heard in the intro. You already read. You already read the title of the episode. That we have a new guest that many of you may or may not have heard of, but I'm very excited to have him on today. And so, just to give a little bit of intro from my own perspective, um, so currently is the lead pastor, correct, at Core Creek Community Church. He has three faith-based podcasts and a fourth called Platform Launchers. And I was personally introduced to him through a mutual friend, Michelle Croyle, who is part of his online group and program. He was having an open house Zoom call, and where anybody could come on. And I was invited. I said, yeah, and it was a lot of fun. It's really cool. I got to learn some stuff, and that's where I got um, the advice to do the rebrand to the pursuit of calling. So this is the guy. And at the end, I actually was able to win one of his books in a little raffle they did called the Podcaster's Playbook. I believe I talked about it before on this podcast, and I read it cover to cover twice. So it implemented some stuff of it pretty quickly after that. So this is Pastor John Stange, and yeah, John, I appreciate you being on.
Hey, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, like I was telling you a little bit before the recording, I'm really excited for today. Just really excited for this because I was thinking about it, it's like, man, it feels like I'm making it a little bit. Whenever I had reached out to somebody that I don't have like a direct personal connection with, and they said yes to be on the podcast, I was like, that's pretty cool. So again, I said already, but thank you for your yes. I appreciate it. And let's see here. So yeah, I usually I have people, I give a little bit of intro, and but well, why don't you, like, who is John Stange? Like, who would you say you are?
Well, the theological answer that ultimately I believe is I'm a new person, a new creation in Jesus Christ, someone who desires to glorify God with my life, and I do that in a variety of ways. Most of the things that I do involve some level of communication and teaching. So I create podcasts. Like you said, I've got 4 different podcasts. I write books. I pastor a church. I also serve as a professor at Cairn University, and I teach a variety of media classes and theology classes. And so I get to do a variety of things like that. My wife and I have been married for 26 plus years. The Lord's blessed us with 4
Wow.
kids, and all 4 of them are adults now. Our youngest just turned 18. So get ready, world, because now she's able to vote. It's kind of
Let's
interesting
go.
when your youngest reaches that level as well. But we're super proud of all of the kids and super excited to be able to be here with you today. But I would say primarily the way that the Lord seems to be utilizing my life tends to be in various ways of communication, maybe leadership development, discipleship, things like that. And I'm really grateful for the opportunities he's given me to serve in those ways.
Great. I really like I've to prepare. I decided that's what I was going to do initially, was like front load a lot of your podcasts. And can I have my podcast queue, and I've been listening to your daily Bible a day. I've been listening to
Mm-hmm.
that every day, and then also your platform launchers one is huge. It's huge because I honestly really I love that podcast because it's not it's different than any other like podcast about business I listen to, because as you say in your books and you've said in your podcast before, you don't do a whole bunch with social media, which
Mm-hmm.
is not something you hear about a lot. And like, so you don't really talk about it a lot. So that leaves room for other topics.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked the episode in the section in the book about what could you talk about for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm on episode like 53 or something like that, episode 53, 54 of this
Excellent.
podcast. And I'm like, I think I think I got another, at least another 2 in me. So I just really like I like the different mindset that you bring to like the entrepreneurial table, I guess. Um, but the with this podcast itself being called the Pursuit of Calling, I wanted to specifically talk about yours.
Hmm.
If you could like define what your calling is, like what would you say? What would
The big word I think that really defines my calling, it usually involves some level of teaching. I've
Mhm.
discovered that that's really where it seems like the Lord opens up doors for me to serve, and really seems to be the way in which He's gifted me to operate. So, I mean, in my role as a local church pastor, one of the main responsibilities I have is a teaching responsibility. There are other responsibilities, obviously, as well, but the area that I feel most equipped for, and certainly receive, I would say, the most joy serving in, is when I have the opportunity to teach. So in that context, I'm teaching the scriptures, I'm helping people grow as followers of Christ, and I get really excited about that. I love that. On a day-to-day basis, in addition to that, I have the opportunity to serve as a professor, which I mentioned, and I get to teach in that context as well. But even in the business world, with the books that I write, and the Platform Launchers podcast, and the different things I'm doing on Platform Launchers, I get to mentor people, I get to teach people, I get to create courses that I deliver online. And a lot of these things really come back to that teaching component. I think I guess I was probably a teenager when it started to dawn on me that teaching was something I really, really enjoyed doing. And when you look at the different ways that the Lord gifts us all, He gifts us all in different ways. And I've come to realize over time, partly just by observing my own life and seeing where the Lord's been directing me, but also the feedback that I've received from others, that teaching seems to be right where the Lord wants to use me, and I'm happy to be used in that capacity. And so, communicating, teaching, all of that, it really does go hand in hand, and I'm grateful to be able to do so.
I think it's really interesting because you're you have your role as the lead pastor, and
Hmm.
that came first, right? That
It
was
did.
before,
Yep. Before
and
the online media, the podcasts, all that, yeah. I've been serving as a pastor for 26 plus years, and the media has really been over the past 10.
so what in that sense I think a lot of people would think, oh, you're the lead pastor, that must be what you're called to do.
Hmm.
What kind of led you, what was that turning point where it was like, oh, this isn't the is it being a lead pastor isn't the only thing that God's calling me towards? Like how
I
do
used
those all kind of interact?
Yeah, I used to get I would say like a kind of a sense of discontent with the fact that frequently I was producing content that was helpful in the context of our local congregation, whether it be, something that I'd prepared to teach or whatever it may be. And I felt like it wasn't good stewardship, the fact that it did not have a second life beyond that moment. So if you were there to experience it live, then you got to hear it. But other than that, the content just went into a file. And it dawned on me somewhere along the way that it'd be better stewardship of some of the things that I'd been working on and spending so much time preparing, if at least initially I put some books together. And I started writing books based on some of the things that I was teaching. And when they were warmly received and people started utilizing them, I thought, oh, well, this is great. I'll produce more. And then in the midst of that, I started listening to a lot of podcasts. And I do have a background in radio. I used to be a radio announcer, and I do voiceover work and things like that. So I have, I had a good mic. I had the ability to record. I knew how to edit audio recordings and all that from my time at the radio station. And after listening to podcasts for a while, I thought, maybe I should try my hand at this. And so at first I created a leadership podcast, and I had a lot of fun doing that. But then that segued into the idea that I had to create the Chapter a Day audio Bible podcast. And when I started offering that, I realized people were really looking for something like that. That podcast has been downloaded millions of times at this point, and it became very clear to me that was something that people just in general, not just in my region of the world, but all throughout the world, we're looking for a podcast of that nature. And so I started
Mhm.
creating that. And then that led into me creating the Dwell on These Things podcast that includes sermon content. And then I started creating daily devotions with Pastor John, which is another daily podcast. And then after a while, people started asking me, not even so much about the podcasts, but they started asking me about the process of creating the content I was creating. They saw
Mhm.
that I had a blog on my website. They saw that I was writing books. They saw that I was creating multiple shows. And people started asking me for advice on how to do that. And I realized that a lot of the questions that I was getting were really about online platform development. And that gave me the idea to begin Platform Launchers, which I started back in 2021, so about 3 years ago, and since then I've been also communicating how to build, grow, and monetize online
Mhm.
platforms that help people directly communicate the message that they feel most passionate about. So it was kind of a gradual progression of learning to do these things. But it's been very interesting to watch how they've developed and how people have started utilizing the content.
Yeah, it's man, that was a really fleshed out answer. That's really good. But you can tell this is something you've talked about a lot, obviously. But you said that you were. I just like this. I wanted to just a little quick note. Um, the first time you said that you used to do radio, I wasn't surprised at all.
Okay.
You have the voice for it.
The radio voice?
Yeah, I heard the first time like on whenever I think Michelle Croyle told me about you, and I thought, okay, I'll look up this podcast and stuff, and I was like, sounds like a show host. It's cool. So like I just want to shout that out. But I want to dive a little bit more into the like I don't know about, I would say, practicals, but there's like a lot of people who listen to this podcast are like I generally get, I've seen like 18 to like even mid 30s,
Mhm.
and most of the time mostly guys, some girls, but mostly guys, and it's but like people that are younger, and like it's what is like for people that like, what is some advice you can give to someone who wants to or is currently working towards, like, they're launching their online platform, they're trying to discover what they should be doing, like, or like maybe it would be like what is something you wish you knew before you started.
I guess I wish I knew that it was a process that requires consistency. So you've got to be
Mm-hmm.
consistent. The people that succeed at anything in this world are people that are consistent. They don't quit easily. They stick with it. They hone their craft. They get good at it. But if somebody really has it in mind to develop a message-based online platform, the first
Mm-hmm.
thing they need to do is discover their message. They have to figure out what's the thing that they could talk about with great enthusiasm for 30 minutes with no prep whatsoever that falls in line with the type of questions people actually ask them. Is there something like that that seems to be their signature message or their
Mm-hmm.
primary message? And I think it's important to hone that down or figure that out, like what that's going to be, because everything they build is going to be connected to that particular message. If they build an online message-based platform, they just want to be really clear about what that message is. And I usually ask
Mm-hmm.
people to tell me, what do people ask you questions about? And then after that, what do you like talking about that you could just talk about enthusiastically with no prep, because it's something that you actually really enjoy thinking about and talking about all the time. From there, I encourage people to figure out how they want to deliver that, because there's different ways to deliver it. They might be primarily someone who writes, or maybe they like to record audio, or maybe they prefer to record video. There's different ways to deliver their message, and maybe they could utilize all three and maybe even several
Mm-hmm.
others. But the point being, um, they have to figure that out, because the consistency gets tested when you have to commit yourself to delivering regular pieces of content. And the
Mm-hmm.
people that deliver regular pieces of content with consistency tend to get ahead. From there, I encourage people to develop the tribe that they're serving. So make connections with the people that you're actually trying to serve, and then put a team together. So I usually phrase that as deploy a team. Bring some people alongside of you that are going to help you do this. And then typically, for people to last in the space where they're creating content, eventually many people start asking the question, is there a way I can ethically make a living from doing this? Is
Yep.
there a way I can earn an income from what may be a hobby? But typically what happens is if you can earn an income, you can upgrade your equipment and maybe you
Yep.
could dedicate more time to what you're doing. And so I encourage people, if they can ethically do so, figure out some ways that they could start deriving an income from what they're doing, because it's going to free up some of their time to be able to do it more, and maybe even
Mhm.
allow them to invest in maybe a better computer or a better microphone or whatever it is that they need to be able to do it more. And that's kind of the process that I encourage people to walk through. I think it's a very logical process, but I typically start with discovering your message. You got to start
Mhm.
with that message, because everything else you do is going to be built off of that.
Mhm. No, that's really good. I think the two main points I got from that, it's like you want to start with consistency and clarity.
Hmm.
Consistency and clarity on what your message is actually going to be. And I wonder if you could clarify more of like what do you mean whenever you say a message based online platform? Like what are you talking about when you say that?
Well, meaning, put it this way, I'll answer that with two examples. So I have
Okay.
two primary online platforms. One is a faith based platform, one is a business based platform. The faith based platform is at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And at Bible Study Headquarters, the message of that platform is I want to help people learn the
Mm-hmm.
scriptures. I want to help them learn the Bible so that they can grow in their walk with Christ. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the message there. The message I'm trying to convey is learn the scriptures. It will help you grow in Christ. Here are some resources to help you do that. For platformlaunchers.com, that's my other online presence, my other online platform. The message there is I teach people how to build, grow, and monetize online platforms. And sometimes I also say it this way, I tell people how to take their passion, turn it into a platform, and earn a paycheck from doing
Mm-hmm.
so. And so when I say a message based platform, I usually ask people to just kind of boil down what that message is and then build their platform or their online content around that. I'll give you even a third example. It's not an example from me, but it's an example from someone that I'm friends with and working with, Velma Knowles. She has leaderspathway.com as her platform. And she talks about her tagline there is where leaders go to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about helping leaders grow in self leadership and business leadership and various things like that. So when I talk about a message based online platform, it's just there's got to be a message that you're passionate about communicating,
Yeah.
and you use the online tools that are available to us to get that message out there.
Okay. Yeah. See, that makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to clarify that because um I know sometimes I can think I can like, from the Christian standpoint, you think message, and I think more of like whenever somebody gives a message on a Sunday,
Hmm.
and like so when I think message based, I think the clarity there is really nice because I think a lot of the people maybe will say like a vision or like what is your like be clear on your vision, be clear on the people that you're aiming to serve.
Hmm.
Um, so no, I appreciate that bit of clarity there. Um, let's see here, what else did I have? Be hmm. So what if like somebody doesn't really know what their calling is, right? Like what they're being called to do. They're kind of maybe they don't know if they even have one. What would you say to them?
I'd start by just being honest about how they're shaped, what they seem
Mm-hmm.
to be good at, what they seem to have a desire to be involved in, what they're curious about. And I always encourage people, if you really want the answers to that, that really needs to involve a lot of prayer, where you
Yeah.
ask the Lord to help make that clear to you. And I do believe that He can make that clear in a variety of ways. I know for me, one of the things that He has frequently done is He has used other people that are in my life to help give me clarity about things that I'm called to do. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the way that'll happen is people will ask me for specific kinds of help
Mm-hmm.
or specific kinds of information. And because of that, I've started to realize that there are certain ways that I really enjoy helping other people. And it starts to become clear as people give you feedback that this very well may be what God has called me to do, as you're observing the kind of questions people ask and the help that they seek from you. So typically, through prayer, through the conviction of the Holy Spirit, as I've been praying, the Lord has clarified that to me. And he's also used people that have come alongside of me asking for those specific pieces of advice or aspects of help that they feel like I'm somehow uniquely equipped to offer them. That really does help
Mm.
clarify a calling. And I'd encourage others to begin with some of those same metrics. Start with prayer and then look at what people in your life are actually asking you to help with, and then think about some of the feedback they give you. If there's something that people have noticed that you do particularly well, then that's certainly something that should get your attention.
I think like the one personal example I can think of is they weren't asking me questions. It was two people that in different contexts, like unprompted, said I should start a podcast.
Mm.
And one was Michelle Croyle, and
Hmm.
that was a while ago. And another one was Pastor Ed, who's lead pastor at Amplify Church.
Hmm.
And his was a completely different idea what I'm doing. He was like more of a laid back, like he just like one that he could sit back and laugh to. And like, cause it was me and my old roommate that who we I did the podcast with previously, and we were just
Hmm.
completely different people, so it was fun. And but the but now it's turned into something like after I heard the second time, it was like in my mind for a while, and it was like that seed was planted, and then I was like, okay, I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and now it's like over a year. So so yeah, I can definitely say like you if you keep hearing something over and over again, typically it's something you want to listen to for sure.
Yeah.
And no, I also think like I've heard you say that before. You said it earlier in the episode that people like listen to a question that people ask you,
Hmm.
and that's something I think is honestly I think is a huge oversight. Like people don't really. That's something I didn't think about, because like it's something that you like. I would like the things whenever people ask me certain questions, that you kind of get that spark and you get kind of light up whenever they ask you a particular question because you get excited to answer. And um and like just like yesterday I had like maybe Sunday I had a friend of mine, Chris, say he was going to start a podcast soon. Asked him what he asked me like what software he should use, and I was like, oh, Riverside. And I was like, I was like, yeah, I knew, you know. I was like, I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And like, so yeah, it's just like it's definitely something like I think also with the podcast and having other people listen to it out, I know they start to know who I am and the things I'm growing in, and like the kind of vision behind this podcast. Like I say, it's the goal of the podcast, where what you say the message is to provide people with the tools and resources to successfully pursue their God given calling.
Hmm.
And well, discover and pursue, I like to say. But
Right.
it's the
It's a good message.
that like I know I'm extremely passionate about, and it's just like something that came across like with the beginning of the podcast. It's something that happened as time went on. Whenever uh, Sean and I did the podcast up, whenever Sean and I were doing technically short, we
Hmm.
just kept going, and eventually it became like I eventually that's what it became. That became like the tagline that we kind of came up with,
Hmm.
and that's kind of how I came up with the pursuit of calling later on. I was because I love talking about the concept of excellence, concepts of the pursuit, and like just purpose. We did a whole series on purpose, him and I, and I was like, that was my
Hmm.
favorite time in the world, so like I was like, I feel like I could do a whole. I feel sure I was like I could talk about this all the time, but I feel
Yeah.
like for this podcast we should move on, and then eventually this is what I'm doing now. So it's just
Mm.
like it's and yeah, I don't know. I think what you're saying is huge. And that's something a lot of people can think about when they're trying to discover what their calling is.
Hmm.
I think one thing that you mentioned earlier, how people like the hardest thing. I think especially for me, because I like my goal is to eventually be a coach, to be a like a
Hmm.
life coach, And the hardest thing for me, I did it before for a little bit of time, right? I did it before for a little bit of time, and it and the hardest thing was charging people. So, and I do have a couple more questions. I think I know, but I also know you have to go. You have to go soon. So I'm going to maybe ask this one, then I'll have two final wrap up questions after that. Um, and so like you kind of touched on it, and I know. Maybe you can quickly run over like how do you really start like making a living in your with your calling, if it's through a platform or I mean, if that's something that you think it's like in the plan for you.
The quickest way to make a living is to offer a service with your platform. So
Mm,
coaching, things of that nature. Typically, people offer some form of service with what
mm,
they're doing before they offer content. But then there's other ways too. You can, yesterday I just received I'm part of a podcast network that does some advertising on my shows, and so I receive commissions from those advertising, from the advertisements on my podcast. There are people that have paid for banner ads on my website. I also have affiliate links on my website with different books and other products.
mm,
Selling courses is another profitable thing that can be done. Times people will bring you in even just via webinar to speak on specific subjects. So speaking fees, whether in person or via webinar, there's a variety of ways, but content is something that people tend to earn an income on second. It's usually services that you can earn an income first
mm,
from.
right.
And then content, as you build up your library of content, then that can become something that you tend to earn income from. I host a membership community. I sell books. I do mentorship. I do coaching. All of these things are ways that finances are contributed. Crowdfunding can be another thing. If someone's early in the process and they want to use something like Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee or something like that,
Mm,
that can be another way to ethically monetize what you're doing online, and people that listen can contribute to, just knowing that you've contributed time to this and you have expenses. But there's really all kinds of ways. I think a lot of people think that the only way to earn a living through an online platform might be just through advertising. And the
mm,
truth is, there are many, many other ways to earn a living. And typically the other things earn help you earn a bigger living than even the advertising will, just
mm,
in a normal day to day context.
mm. No, that's good. Thank you for that.
Hmm.
And I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm gonna
Sure,
quickly go. There's a couple questions I didn't send to you, so I apologize.
that's okay.
I always ask at the end. I always ask guests these two questions. When it comes to like personal growth, what's and like maybe even the pursuit of calling and launching your platform, like what's like the top resource that you typically recommend to people?
As far as launching an online platform, okay. Well, one of my favorite resources that's kind of an all-in-one resource is something called Kajabi,
Mm,
and I find it to be a useful resource for building websites, hosting podcasts, utilizing, creating courses and hosting membership communities. It's kind of like an all-in-one solution, and it's not
mm,
cheap, but it's also not ridiculously expensive when you consider all the separate things it's doing. It manages your email list. It's basically like a business in a box, and you can truly run an entire online platform from it. But if something like that wasn't quite as affordable, if someone was new and they didn't really want to spend that kind of money, which I would totally understand,
mm,
another great resource that's a bit more budget friendly is utilizing Squarespace and some of the content or some of the ways in which they allow you to monetize content and things like that and produce content. They have a lot of good options. My favorite is Kajabi, but
mhm.
I also have had really good experience using Squarespace, and that's a bit more budget friendly.
Right. And I'm going to be start using Squarespace pretty soon
Yes.
for a lot of stuff. So that's definitely a great recommendation.
Mhm.
My last question would be, who would you, now that you've been on the podcast, you kind of get a feel for what this is all about. Who would you recommend as a guest for the podcast?
Who'd I recommend as a guest? Well, let's see. There are, you mentioned Michelle Croyle. Has she been a guest on your show?
She hasn't. No.
I think I'd start there because she's the one that's
Okay.
been plugging you into different things, and she's done some really great things with the people that she's serving online. I would definitely recommend her. She's always pleasant to talk to, and just has a lot of wisdom and certainly the heart to help people. And so that would certainly be somebody that I'd recommend connecting with and checking out. And thankfully, you already know her.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's something I should. I think it was more of a definitely a reminder to reach
Yeah,
out.
absolutely.
And since you have your platforms, I'm already going to put platform launchers in the show notes. But is there any other areas that people can reach you at if they want to reach
Certainly.
out?
Yeah, I mean, people can always message me via email, john@platformlaunchers.com. The website is obviously platformlaunchers.com. And if they're interested in building a message-based online platform, on the homepage of Platform Launchers, there's a free 21-day platform development planning guide. And I always encourage people to download it. It'll just help you figure out how to build the different elements of an online platform. And I give it away for free. It's right on the homepage of the website. And if people are interested in faith-based content, which I would assume that many of your listeners probably are, they can head over to BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And I have lots of freebies over there as well. One free gift that they would notice right on the homepage at Bible Study Headquarters is a book. I'll show it to you right here. Got it right here with me. It's a book called Walking in Wisdom, and
Okay.
it's an overview of the book of Proverbs, just the idea of how to grow in godliness, avoid costly mistakes, and get ahead in life. And if people want a free digital copy of my book, Walking in Wisdom, they can get that right at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And that, like I said, is right at the homepage and free to download. They could have it instantly if that's something they'd be interested in reading.
Wow, that's great. I'm probably going to download that later.
Awesome. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being on again. Sorry, I know we went a little over time.
Oh, we're so good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. And yeah, yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Guys, thank you for listening to this episode of the Pursuit of Calling podcast. If you liked it, go ahead and give us a subscribe, follow, review on any whatever platform you're listening to your podcast on, and share it out on your social media platforms. So, all right, guys, see you next time.